Good evening, sports fans, and welcome back to another episode of the Average Joe Sports Show. I am your host, Braden Good, and once again, we are joined by my dad, Mark Good. Mark, how's it going in sunny California?
It was sunny today. It was a nice mid 60s. So
Yeah, it's warming up, and it's warming up in Rexburg too. We are not, I was actually able to see some of the numbers in our parking spots today, so we're making progress. The snow's melting a little bit. So we've got a good show planned for you guys today. What we're going to be looking at is our continuing on in our rankings of the top 10 of all time. We're going to go ahead and keep moving forward, going to my personal favorite position, the center position, and it's a position that's pretty steeped in NBA lore. I mean, there's been a lot of great centers throughout all of history, so I'm excited to see what this list is and what a breakdown is. So let's go ahead and hop on to it. All right, so here we go. Top 10 centers across all eras. All right, so coming in at number 10, I've got Dwight Howard. I wasn't necessarily going to put him on here, and I don't think his scoring is a little bit down. 16.7 points, 12.3 rebounds. But what I got him on here is because I'm pretty impressed by a guy. I mean, if we were giving Dennis Rodman credit for playing good defense and being a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year award, and being a good rebounder, why don't we give it to a guy who's playing in an era where there's a lot more guard. It's not so much of a league where where the centers get the rebounds and push them out. It's more of an era where everybody gets the rebounds. You got small forwards getting rebounds. You got your two getting rebounds. Everybody's getting rebounds. And you got a guy who's averaging almost as many rebounds as Dennis Rodman did. Averaging almost 2 blocks a game, was a blocks leader in the NBA twice. An 8-time All-Star, 8-time All-NBA, 5-time All-Defensive. Shooting almost 60% for the field. And granted, his offensive game isn't great, but you could say the same thing about Shaq. Shaq couldn't really score when you got him too far outside of the key. And you had Dwight Howard, who for that 3-year stretch, for a 3 to 5 year stretch when he was with the Orlando Magic, he was a dominating force. I mean, you had the game plan to try and stop a guy like that when he was getting those Defensive Player of the Years. So I put him all the way up. I put him at number 10 because I couldn't rank him with anybody else. But just looking at what he did in his career, and since I gave love to Dennis Rodman at number 10, I think Dwight Howard will be a future Hall of Famer when his playing career is over, and I think he'll deserve a spot there.
Interesting choice. You can't argue with it too much. I think Dwight Howard always felt like his offensive game was a lot better than it really was. He was a cleanup guy. He was roll to the basket. If the point guard could get into the middle of the key, then whoever was guarding Dwight had to stop him. Then Dwight was left wide open, and that's where he got all his points. So, I mean, hey, he proved he was a better player than his second trip through the Laker organization. He was a much better teammate. I don't think he was a very good teammate the first time he was around. So,
no, I think he was a little bit too much like Shaq for Kobe's liking. Just sort of trusted on his natural athleticism. It didn't really work too hard to get any better. Sort of like Shaq. I mean, Shaq was a phenomenal player, and we'll get
Shaq
into him
had a lot more game than Dwight Howard on the offensive end.
But that sort of relationship sours after a while. If you got a guy like Dwight Howard who's not putting in the work, when you got a guy like gym rat like Kobe, of course it's not going to work out.
Right.
Kobe's, you got to be as good as he is, or you got to get out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, work harder.
Work harder. Get off my team.
Mm-hmm.
So I initially didn't want to put him on this list, but then I was just sort of looking at the stats and thinking about putting Dennis Rodman at number 10 for being pretty much a defensive specialist, and Dwight Howard's got similar numbers, while he can also score a bit more than Rodman did. So
I did not put Howard on my list.
Yeah, I figured that you're not a huge Dwight Howard fan, and I wasn't either until he came. I mean, if he hadn't come back and helped the Lakers win a ring the second time, I might not have put him on there, but he sort of won his way back into my good graces.
Yeah, he definitely became a more. I appreciated his skill set last year more than at any time in his career. I felt like he did all the things that they asked him to do. and I think he was a good teammate. He wasn't about he wasn't about Dwight Howard. It was about what can the team do. And I honestly wish the Lakers would have kept him, but
Same. I think we need that. Montrezl Harrell is great and all, but he's not as bouncy or long as Dwight Howard is. So I
well, they
think we're
could have
definitely
had
missing
both of
that.
them.
Yeah. I mean, we could have not gone with Marc Gasol. I feel like that
Yeah,
was a bit of
exactly.
a mistake. And now the Lakers are looking at trying to fix that mistake. They're like, oh shoot, we goofed.
Yep. Yep.
We goofed there. So moving on down to your number 10, this is someone that I wouldn't put him on my list just because of injuries, but we got Bill Walton on the going up there. So why did Bill Walton make your list?
Because unfortunately for Bill Walton, he spent so much of his career injured that we never got to see his true greatness. But when he was healthy, what a fantastic player. He was just a monster outlet pass, get the rebound, get the outlet pass. When he was in Portland, he was just an outstanding center, comparable to the effect that Kareem had for the Lakers back in the same time frame. And his numbers would have been much better, especially points scored, if he'd been able to stay healthy for his career. But I mean, he was a great player, having watched him.
Yeah, it looks like he played. Yeah, it looks like he played a total of 10 seasons in the NBA, and towards the end of his career, he only went over 70 games once. For the most part, he didn't play over. For most of his career, he only went over 60 twice in his career. So
Yeah,
he definitely was stymied
he
by
just
injury.
couldn't stay healthy. But when he was healthy, there wasn't anybody that was like head and shoulders above him at all. I mean, he was just a fantastic player.
Did he get his 2 rings with Boston, or did he get them? Or did he get one?
No,
with
he got
Portland?
the first one was with Portland in '77,
and then he got the other one with the with Boston.
and then he picked one up with the Celtics. And by the time he was with Celtics, he was coming off the bench. That's where he got his sixth man award. But he did everything that he was supposed to do. I mean, he was a team player. It wasn't about what Bill Walton's stats are. He was just whatever's good for the team. And, his stats are all around. I mean, he's just very good all around. Good defensive player, good offensive player, great passer. He could score. Like I said, the only thing that stopped him was injuries.
Yeah.
So that's what keeps him at number 10, and not, if he was healthy for his career, he probably would have been much higher.
Yeah, I
certainly
think
on
so.
my list.
Yeah, I think it's sort of a shame that's what happens. You look at several players. You got like Grant Hill, Penny Hardaway, these great players who would have been better than they were if they weren't sidelined by injuries.
Mm-hmm.
So that's always rough. But no, I mean, I like Bill Walton. I think he was a pretty smart player. I mean, you look at his son Luke Walton, who's now a coach for the Sacramento Kings. I mean,
for however long that lasts.
Yeah, I think they were both pretty cerebral guys. They were both smart, understood.
Yeah, his game IQ was fantastic. Being, he was coached by Wooden at UCLA. I mean, they had great teams in college, and he kept it up in the pros. I mean, he was just a really good player.
Yeah. All right, moving on down to number 9, where I've got George Mikan, known as the original big man. We're actually both in agreement here. We both got George Mikan sitting at number 9. But he sort of paved the road for the big man to come into the league. I mean, 23 points, 13 rebounds. He was the original big man. He started the process going. I mean, he could score, he could rebound. He was a 5-time champ. Granted, this was, when there were fewer teams, less competition, but still he sort of paved the way for the big men that would follow him.
Yeah, he was the original center. I mean, there's nobody like him before him, and after him, then people started trying to get big guys in the middle and see how they could do. But yeah, he was for his time, there wasn't anybody better. So
Yeah.
a little before my era.
Oh,
in the 50s.
definitely before. I mean, but like, for a guy who was 6'10", 245 pounds, it was back when he got started, it was a sport. It was ruled by the small guy, and he made the big guys popular.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, they figured out how to utilize his skill set. We can score from 2 feet in.
Yeah, he was. I guess one night in the early '50s, he was a superstar. I said the marquee at Madison Square Garden read simply, "Geo Mikan versus Knicks."
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't about the Lakers. It was.
Yep.
It was about George Mikan. He was the original superstar. Got everybody going.
Yeah, he was the first superstar, I think, in the league.
Yeah, he first paycheck was $12,000. So woo, raking in the money.
Well, that's probably pretty good money then.
Yeah. So great player, and I think it's a solid number 9. Because I mean, I think he's a number 9, not necessarily because of his longevity. I mean, you look at his only 4-time All-Star, 6-time All-NBA, but because he sort of put the big man and made the big man popular. He paved the way for the other giants on this list.
So how do you become? I thought that was fascinating. How do you become a 6-time All NBA selection? Making you can only make the All-Star team 4 times.
Yeah, that doesn't make
like.
Maybe the All-Star
You're the best player in the league.
The All-Star game wasn't around when he was his first 2 years. Who knows?
Well, and that's possible. That is definite possibility.
Yeah, if there's no All-Star game, there's no way he could be named to it. So
yep.
Well, we'll go with that because I don't know what the real story is behind that. So we'll say that's what it is. So moving on down to number 7. And now we sort of get our orders. We sort of got our order jumbled here. I think from now on they're pretty much identical. It's just a matter of where we put them. I put Moses Malone down there at number 8, just because just looking at the numbers. A 12-time All-Star, led the league in rebounds 6 times, 8-time All-NBA, 2-time All-Defensive. 20 points, 12 rebounds. Over a block a game. Shot really well from the floor. So I got to go with Moses Malone. I don't really know too much about him. I never had an opportunity to see him play. He's not really someone that I go on YouTube looking for highlights for. But
well, he was one of the first players to skip college and go pro. He signed with an ABA team. I don't remember who, but that's where he started his career. And then, he was and I've got him a little higher on my list, but.
Yeah. He always I guess he had smaller hands for a 6'10" guy, so that's kind of impressive that he brought a championship to Philadelphia, was a good rebounder.
That was on a good Philadelphia team with Julius Irving and Mo Cheeks and can't think of who the other guard was, but Bobby Jones. They had a great team then.
Yeah. So actually, here I just found an interesting story about him. So apparently, in high school, there was no competition for him, so he actually went to prison to play basketball. So he was allowed to play pickup games with the inmates at a nearby state penitentiary, and learn no frills, aggressive style of basketball. So he decided. There's no competition for me, so I'm going to prison. I'm going to learn how to play with those guys.
He was a physical player. He was a load to try to guard. Good offensive game, great defensive game. And I remember watching him back in the 80s, and he was fantastic.
Yeah. And I feel like that's something, and unfortunately, I feel like the bruising big man is sort of a lost art in the days NBA. I was watching an old game, watching the Pacers and the Lakers back in 2000, and just the physicality of the game back then was astonishing. Just how few fouls were called. And you look at today's NBA, and it's just, and there's no one that plays like that. There's no big bruisers in the NBA anymore. There's no one that's gonna set the hard pick or hit the guy as he's going up to the rim. It's a little soft, unfortunately. And
Well, they
so,
call fouls now.
yeah, well, and so now and
Try
and
to
he
do
played
that stuff.
and he played in an era when that was permitted, and he was still able to get to the bucket, still get rebounds, and he was probably an instigator. A 3-time MVP.
Yeah.
That's nothing to laugh at. I mean that,
Mm-hmm.
especially as a center, you don't see a lot of centers win MVPs, especially not in today's NBA, not anymore. Back in the day, it was a bit more common, but even then, I still feel like they weren't the most flashy guys out there.
Well, he
Sort of
set the
winning point
tone. I
guards.
mean, he was a tone setter for that team.
Yeah. So you went ahead and you've got, so I went ahead and you've got Patrick Ewing sitting at number 8. I have him ranked a bit lower. Why'd you put him back at number 8? What wasn't there for you to put him a little bit higher?
Well, I think there's just the guys that I had ranked ahead of him, I think were just better players. I don't think he ever got an all-star or a MVP award, as you see there. He was good, but to me, just maybe he suffers from the didn't win a championship. He was on some good teams with the Knicks, but not great. But he was a top of the line center. But I mean, as I was trying to rank guys, I think there was guys that I felt were better.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm pretty impressed by I think why I put him a little bit higher is because I like his defensive abilities. I mean, 11-time All-Star, 7-time All-NBA. I mean, that's pretty good amount being named to All-NBA. I mean, he had 3-time All-Defensive. I mean, I think, yeah, I think I mainly put him on. I mean, I think I was looking at his blocks per game. I think that's sort of where I was looking at a guy who's getting almost 2.5 blocks per game for a career. I mean, that's definitely something that's the guy you have to look out for when you're coming down the lane. That's not someone you can sort of glance by. Yeah. I mean, I think he had great defensive instincts, but yeah, unfortunately, I feel like he suffered from what a lot of players in his era suffered, and that was the curse of Michael Jordan.
Yeah, I mean, that was challenging for him. I think his rebounding was a little bit down from where I would hope to see it for a big guy, but you can't take anything credit. Anybody that makes it into the top 10 is pretty good. It's like can't be too much arguing about you should have had him so much higher because there's only 10 spots. It's like,
yeah, well, and so apparently, I guess I was reading a story. I guess that Bill Murray shared that he was there at one of the Knicks games with his 2 kids, and there was a loose ball, and Patrick Ewing came running out, going to look like he was going to go get it, and he decided to stop when he saw the 2 kids that were sitting there, like right where it's going to be. He's like, "Nope, I ain't running them over."
Well, see, he wasn't a gamer.
Yeah, it's he's willing to sacrifice the ball. He didn't want to commit involuntary manslaughter. I mean, that would not have been good for the kids if he had landed on him.
Maybe
that was a big boy. So I think I've actually got him. Yeah. So we weren't too far off in where we stuck him. I had him sitting down there at number 7. So just about a spot off, just because I think he was a defensive player who, through no fault of his own, suffered from being paired with Michael Jordan. And then he stopped a lot of great players from getting their rings. And moving on, you're number 7. You've got David Robinson, and I think I have him coming up next. And actually, oh wow, that's here. We're just gonna skip on down because that is an error on my end. So David Robinson, because that's David Robinson's stats. What you were looking at before is Patrick Ewing's stats. So there's David Robinson, number 7 for you, number 6 for me. Why'd you put him at number 7?
Because his stats are comparable to Ewing's, but a little bit better. And then he was able to win, the 2 championships. Um, all defensive, 10-time all NBA. I think his resume is just a little bit better than Ewing's. And so, for me, that was enough. Comparable player, but I think he was just a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, if especially look at the rebounds, he actually averaged a double-double. Patrick Ewing came close, but couldn't quite get there.
Mm-hmm.
And David Robinson David Robinson did have the advantage of playing for one of the greatest head coaches of all time, Greg Popovich. And that definitely helped his game. He also benefited from playing with Tim Duncan.
Yeah, but in some ways, it's like, well, he was getting a lot of those rebounds, whereas, Tim Duncan should have been getting those rebounds as well. So you had two big guys that were fighting for him, and he was still able to get over 10 rebounds a game.
Yeah,
so
I mean
that's impressive on its own.
Yeah, I mean
he was the anchor to that team. That big body in the middle. When he retired, Duncan kind of had to move over to play center.
Yeah,
more.
but they still well, they still listed him a power forward, but
they had guys starting as centers, but it's kind of like they were no talent stiffs, basically.
Yeah. So I like David Robinson, and he's actually a guy that I actually got to watch play a little bit. I remember watching him and Tim Duncan squaring off against the Shaq and Kobe Lakers back when they were, coming into their own and being the dynamite force that they were. And so I got to enjoy the game, the original Twin Towers lineup, and then sort of teams.
Well, the original Twin Towers was Samson and Olajuwon, I think.
Oh, really? I thought they called him something different. I don't know. I feel like I remember growing up hearing them referred to, David Robinson, Tim Duncan referred to as the Twin Towers. So David Robinson, and I think one of the things that's good about David Robinson is he was the perfect Spurs player. When Tim Duncan got there, he sort of set aside his game and sort of let Tim Duncan take the lead. Because he saw the greatness of Tim Duncan. He's like, I'm not going to stand in his way. I'm going to go ahead and let Tim Duncan play in the post more. Let me go ahead and stretch out a little bit, stretch the floor.
Well, yeah, he was definitely not a selfish player at all. He was a team guy, team first. It was more important for him to be part of a winning team than for him to score 30 points a night.
Yeah. So and apparently when he was in college, he set a Division I record when he was playing with 14 shots in a single game. So and then he also averaged 5.9 blocks per game in his
in college.
in college.
Well, he probably benefited from playing for Navy.
That's true. But
so he was playing against second-rate competition a lot of the times. He wasn't facing Duke and North Carolina regularly.
But he hit. He hit a growth spurt. He was a Navy guy, work on Navy sub, and when he started, he was 6'4", and then he had a growth spurt. Ended up being 7'1" in about a. He grew 7 inches. So that's all of a sudden you go from a guy who his freshman year he was 7.6 points and 4 rebounds as a freshman. And then he grew 7 inches and became a defensive stalwart.
Well, that'll do it.
Yeah. So he scored 50 points his final college game. He was the best player in the '87, but because he had a military commitment, he actually delayed his time in the NBA by a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
So the Spurs actually drafted him and then had to wait 2 years to actually get him to play. So. That showed you how good he was. The Spurs were like, we'll blow a draft pick. We won't have him for 2 years, but we're okay with that.
We'll wait.
We'll wait for him.
Mm-hmm.
So then going on down to your pick, this is where you had Moses Malone. So what gave Moses Malone the edge over Ewing and David Robinson there?
Well, I think just his interior toughness, the more rebounds per game, almost as many points, the similar blocks, And then the 3-time MVP. I think for me, he was all NBA comparable amount of times. And for me, he was just a stud player on the inside. There wasn't anybody like him. I think Shaq's game is more close to Malone's in its power than a lot of other guys. I think that Malone was a quick, big guy that was strong as an ox, kind of a just no nonsense in the middle. Don't even bother to come in here because it's not going to be pretty.
Yeah, I feel like I almost wish I was a little bit older so I could experience, these old school centers, since that's a position that I greatly admired, and it's one I emulated growing up. And then I realized that I made a mistake when I, stopped growing at about 6 feet, and I'm like, oops, nope, that's that didn't do me any good. Should have fallen in love with one of those.
Should have learned how to shoot from 3.
Yeah, should have learned how to shoot. But yeah, Moses Malone, solid pick. I think this is one of those lists where, it just sort of comes down to personal taste, what you like, what you're looking for,
and what you saw. I saw Moses Malone. He was going up against my Lakers back in the 80s. So I saw him at his best, and so I remember that.
Yeah. So next picks up, we got this one. We're actually in agreement as well, where we both went ahead and went with Hakeem Olajuwon. I like Hakeem Olajuwon because I think he was almost the perfect blend of offense and defense. I feel like, he's the quintessential player you're looking for as a center. 21 points, 11 rebounds, over 3 blocks a game. Shot over 50% because a decent free throw shooter. MVP.
Yeah.
Finals MVP, 12-time All-Star, 12-time All-NBA, 9-time All-Defensive, 2-time Defensive Player of the Year, 3-time. You just look at his career accomplishments, and you're like, dang, that dude did a lot in his career.
Mm-hmm.
Especially
he had great footwork for a big guy, and he benefited from Michael Jordan being retired for 2 years. Who knows if he would have won those titles if Jordan was still playing, but you never know.
Well, everybody who's in love with Michael Jordan would say, oh, there's no way Hakeem wins with Michael Jordan. If he had kept playing, he would have won 8 straight championships. He would have been the next Bill Russell.
It's possible, but Hakeem and that Houston team was very good. Robert Horry and Clyde Drexler and Hakeem, they were a very good team. So
yeah, well, something that's impressive to me is that he didn't start playing basketball until he was 15.
Yeah.
He played football before that. I guess soccer, not football.
Soccer.
Soccer.
Yes.
So that's why he had good footwork. You got to have good footwork as a soccer player. And he had a move, that dream shake that, you don't really see too many players emulating in today's NBA.
Mm-hmm.
Which is something I don't understand is you got these, speaking of, there's many different players you can take this from, but you're looking at these players that were back in the day and no one's tried to copy their shot. Joel Embiid tries to do the dream shake a little bit, but he's not as proficient as Hakeem Olajuwon is. But like I said, something I don't understand is why aren't more big guys doing this? Why aren't small guys even? Why aren't more people learning how to do this? Growing up, learned how to do the dream shake because it got him open. You watch him, he could just cook guys down low. People would have no idea what he was doing.
I don't know if it's guys just don't put in the work or it's too hard.
Yeah.
Perfecting something like that takes, you have to have natural talent, and then it takes a lot of work.
Yeah. And when he retired, he was the leader in block shots when he retired, and he was 7th on the all-time points list. Obviously, he's obviously he's been pushed down the list because you've had some just great players coming by later, but he's still top. He's still the top shot blocker with 3,830. So you could say he was I would say he's the 3rd best shot blocker the NBA's ever seen. The first best that we could count stats for, but I'd say he's the 3rd best shot blocker in the NBA.
Quite possible. He was
because there's two
An
guys
amazing player.
yeah, there's two guys below him. There's two guys on this list that were definitely better shot blockers than he was, but they don't get the credit for it. But no, Hakeem Olajuwon, I mean, great player. I didn't really get to watch him too much, but he's one of those guys who's a bit more highlights, a bit more prevalent. Just watching his dream shake is it's beautiful to watch.
Mm-hmm. It is. He was fun.
Yeah. Moving on down, we're in a little bit of not on the same page here. I have Bill Russell sitting here at number 4. I mean, he was one of the all-time great centers. 11-time NBA champ, 5-time MVP, 12-time All-Star, 11-time All-NBA. Was on the defensive team once, 4-time rebound leader. I mean, he was almost, I'd say he's sort of like a Dennis Rodman type player where he's not going to score you a lot of points. That wasn't what his job was on your team. His job was to get rebounds and play defense. And considering the fact he was a 6'9", 215-pound guy. I mean, the fact that he was able to be so successful is pretty impressive. And I've got him at number 4, just because he was, 11 championships. You can't argue with that. Even though he was part of a stacked team. I mean,
mm-hmm. Yeah, they definitely had a team that was built to win, but he was that guy in the middle that allowed it all to be possible. I mean, his interior defense, his rebounding, and scoring as needed. And, the MVP awards speak for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, 5-time MVP. I mean, that's not something you get by accident.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was also a good shot blocker because he wouldn't knock the ball out of bounds. He would try to tap it off the glass and tap it to his teammates to give them a chance to get going on that fast break. He wouldn't just swat it out, just swat it into next week. Yeah, I mean, Bill Russell, one of the great players, and sort of the guy that picked up the torch after George Mikan as far as the greatness of big men go. He sort of, George Mikan passed the torch off to him, and
he was the next big, big man that was a superstar.
And then
after Mikan.
It went and ran with it. So yeah, number 4, and I mean, that's just because I think there's 3 guys that are better than him. You've got Shaq sitting at number 4. I've got him coming up next. So Shaq, number 4. Why is he back at number 4?
My biggest gripe with Shaq is the same one that Kobe had with him. He had all that talent, and it just seems like he could have done more. If he had won 6 or 7 championships instead of the 5?
4. He had 3 with the Lakers and 1
with the Lakers and 1 with the Heat. Yeah. He probably should have won 7 or 8 championships, but he didn't work hard enough. His rebounding for a guy his size, it just seems like he should have grabbed more rebounds. And his free throw shooting was atrocious.
Oh my gosh, it was. I didn't put it on there because I'm like, I'm not going to put any free throws on that because that's just not impressive at all.
I mean, he was good, but for me, it was just to get higher. He would have had to just accomplish more, because I felt like his skills were there, and he just didn't work hard enough to get to that next level consistently. He was fine with where he ended up. So
yeah. I mean, and Shaq was a player that I grew up watching. He's sort of that. He was sort of, he was the big man of my time. Just like Kareem was for you. Shaq was the guy for me as a big man.
And he was punishing. I mean, you watch some of those games with him just beating up other centers, and other centers trying to beat him up because he was just so big.
There's no way. I mean, I was
couldn't
watching,
stop him.
I mean, I was watching again. As I mentioned, I was watching the finals game today. I think it might have been game 4 or 5. They were playing against the Pacers, and I mean, one of the guards just totally trucked him, and he still almost got the shot up. I mean, but the guard just sort of like cannonballed into his arms, didn't really make a play on the ball, got called for a flagrant, but like that's what you had to do. Because if you didn't just hack him, he was going to go over you and dunk the ball.
Yeah,
You
no,
watch
he
those
was.
highlights. You know, I mean, he gets that little elbow in there, little elbows you out of the way as he turns around to the basket, and then he does the whole, two-handed slam that they now have a statue in front of Staples Center with him, hanging off a backboard.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the guy broke rims, and the game I was watching in Portland, I think he had 20 rebounds, and he had 30-something points, 20-something rebounds. He's one of those guys where if he had wanted to, he might have been able to get up to 17, 18 rebounds a game. He was that big. Like
and that's why he doesn't end up higher on my list, is because he always felt like he could have done that, but he
didn't want to.
Didn't put in the effort to do it.
Yeah. He was one of
those.
Like
if the ball comes to me, I'll rebound it. But
he was one of those guys where it's like he played his way into game shape. He didn't come into camp in game shape. He sort of came into the season fat and huge and sort of worked his way back into it. I think one of my favorite memes that I've seen is someone who is I don't know why someone would compare this, but they had a picture. They photoshopped Draymond Green guarding Shaq. And the caption was, "Does this end in a steal or a block?" And someone responded, "It ended Draymond Green on a stretcher." Because I'm sorry, I mean, Draymond Green is a decent defender, don't get me wrong, but he is vastly undersized. And you had Shaq punishing big guys like Arvydas Sabonis and other large guys back in the day, and he was able to just run over them and just act like they weren't.
Yeah, Rick Smits, and I mean all the big guys that played against him. I mean, honestly, you could have called him for offensive fouls every time he turned around, because he always had his elbows out and he just punched you in the ribs with his elbows.
But at the same time, you could have sent him to the line every time down too, because there was.
Because it's really hard to officiate something that's that just crazy big.
Well, that you don't want to slow the game down that much. I mean, it's exciting to watch Shaq get the ball in the low post, turn around, and just tomahawk it in the defender's face.
No, I mean there was nobody like him before, and there hasn't been since. There was guys that were better scorers in the league. There's guys that are better rebounders, but he had a pretty good all-around game. I just felt like he could have been more.
Yeah, I agree.
Is my biggest disappointment with Shaq.
Yeah, he could have been one of the greatest. He could have been the greatest center of all time, I think, if he had applied himself. I think he had the tools to be the greatest of all time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think there was no one who could stop him. He was an unstoppable force.
Yeah.
There was no one's going to touch him, but he did put in the work.
Yep.
So going on down to our number threes, here we sort of switch spots. This is where I've got Shaq. Again, that's the player that I grew up watching, and it's someone that I loved watching. I mean, I just wish he had done more, but I still think he did a bit more. I still like him a bit more than Bill Russell, just because of how dominant he was and how dominant he could have been.
I think it's the one MVP award. That's disappointing.
I think it should have been two. I think Steve Nash stole two MVPs from deserving Lakers. I think he stole one from Shaq, and he stole one from Kobe. And he shouldn't have two. He should only have one. But that's neither here nor there.
No, that's possible. But like I said, Shaq, it's like for a guy that was so dominant, you would expect that they would be picking up a lot more MVP awards than one.
Yeah.
Or two. I mean, if you're the best player in the game for a 10-year stretch, you should probably have 4 or 5 MVP awards.
Yeah, I mean, that's what some of that. I mean, you look at a LeBron James, that's a guy who's worked on his craft. He's got 4 MVP awards. So Shaq easily could have done that if he had just done a little bit more to be a little bit better. I mean, it's a shame.
Yeah. So that's why Russell gets my nod here. Just he did more with lesser physical tools, and he did more.
Yeah.
And I don't think you have the right stats up there for Bill Russell.
I I'm looking at that too. It's easy to me. I make mistakes apparently. Yeah. A little bit too late
Only
to fix
on
it
my
now.
guys.
Yeah. Well, that's because I made my guys first, and then I started trying to copy and paste off of mine so I could put them onto yours. But yeah, oops, that's my bad. But we saw the stats before. I mean,
Yeah,
one of
the
all-time
5
favorites.
MVP awards,
Yeah.
5
And
championships.
and we're actually in agreement on our next two picks. This kind of broke my heart a little bit that I had to put Wilt Chamberlain at number 2 because he is my all-time favorite player, hands down. I love Wilt Chamberlain. I loved his game. I mean, and so it kind of broke my heart that I couldn't in my head I couldn't justify putting him at number 1, compared to the guy at number 1. But I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. 30 points, 22, almost 30, almost 23 rebounds a game, 4.5 assists, almost shot 54%, never fouled out of a game. I mean, this is a guy who
that's impressive.
I mean, he never fouled out. He never got into a fight. I mean, there was times when guys would take swings at him, and he sort of, I remember a story where a guy tried to pick a fight with him. He sort of put his hand on his head, cartoon style, and let the guy take a couple of swings at him. I mean, but just looking at what he did in his career, a 4-time MVP, won the Finals MVP, 13-time All-Star, 10-time All-NBA, 11-time rebound leader, 2-time All-Defensive, 7-time scoring leader, 1-time assist leader, just because he felt like it, and a Rookie of the Year award. And he is the all-time leading rebounder in NBA history, and I don't think it's close. I think he's head and shoulders above the next guy.
Probably. Yeah, there's nobody that dominated the middle quite the same way as he did.
Yeah. So the next closest person is Bill. So Wilt Chamberlain's got 23,924 rebounds, and Bill Russell's got 21,620. So he's got 2,300 rebounds. He's got about 2,300 rebounds more than the guy in second place, and that is more than 6,000 over Kareem, who's sitting in third. I mean, you're talking about one of the most dominating offensive forces in the game. It's a real shame that they didn't count blocks back when he played, because there was a story, the Philadelphia sort of kept an unofficial record of blocks, and they had him at 26 in one game at one point in time. I mean, the all-time NBA record, I think now is like 10
or 11.
10 or 11. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
I mean, let me look that up real quick. But yeah, I mean, he had 26. The game wasn't over yet, and he had 26 blocks in the game. I mean, that just tells you how great of a defensive player he was. It looks like the record is 17, held by Elmore Smith.
Elmore, he almost made my list.
Yeah, and then you had Manute Bol and Shaq are both tied for second at 15 per game.
15 in a game, not 15 per game.
In a game, in a game. I mean, I think Wilt Chamberlain would have been, if they had kept track of blocks, he probably would have been getting you over 10 a game easily.
Oh, I doubt that.
For
his career,
I think he would be. I mean, just think of. I mean, he was a giant among little small guys. I mean,
I know, but there's a lot of guys that shot from outside. There's no way you're going to get 10 blocks every game. I mean,
I don't know. I mean, we'll never know at this point. But you had a guy like Hakeem Olajuwon got over 3 per game.
Yeah, I think you might have had a guy like Wilt maybe getting 5 or 6 a game, but
maybe
10 is that's an impressive. If that was the case, that's impressive. That's a triple double.
I think I think Wilt Chamberlain would be a walking triple double in today.
A triple double with blocks, rebounds, and points.
I think he'd be a walking triple double for his career. There would have been a lot. He would have been the first guy to average a triple double over a season if they had kept track of blocks back when he played. But I mean, he was a guy who was benching 400 pounds, had almost a 50-inch vertical leap. I mean, he was just an athletic freak of nature. And I love watching him play. He had his little finger roll, backwards finger roll to get his shot into the basket. One of those shots that, again, why don't people do that in today's NBA? I mean, it was pretty unstoppable.
Yeah, I don't know why. But I think it has to do with they're not willing to put in the work to figure it out. Everybody wants to shoot 3 balls. So, the center position has changed quite a bit from the days of Wilt, and who knows, maybe in 5 or 6 years, the Joker will end up on a list like this.
Yeah.
Because the things he's doing are pretty impressive. But, Wilt was the first big guy that I got to see live on TV. But, he was different than other guys. He could score, he could pass, he a tremendous rebounder, great defender. Just his physical ability was unparalleled with other guys that were playing with him until the number one center came along.
Yeah. Well, and this is a guy who, yeah, he worked out hard, but like he didn't have basketball wasn't his primary focus. He loved playing volleyball. He loved just having a good time. He was a guy who showed that you can slack off and have fun and still be super talented and still be able to put in the work in the gym. It's something that Shaq should have tried to emulate. If he had tried to be like Wilt Chamberlain, Wilt Chamberlain had fun. He went out to parties. He had a good life. To him, he had a good life, and he was still able to get out there on the court and get after it in points.
Yep.
So yeah, I love Wilt Chamberlain, my favorite player, but I couldn't rank him above the number one guy on the list, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. A player who I think you could make an argument as the greatest of all time. Everyone talks about Michael Jordan's greatness with his.
I would.
With his, he's got six championships. So does Kareem. 19-time All-Star, 15-time All-NBA, 11-time All-Defensive. Scoring leader twice, 4-time blocks, rookie of the year, led the league in rebounding once, shot 50, almost 56%. If you look at what he did, he was almost, I don't have his MVPs on there. I know he's got at least
he's
one
got
MVP,
6.
right? He's got 6 MVPs. Yeah, I didn't put that on
6 MVPs.
there, which I think is more than Michael Jordan. So,
I think they might be tied, but
let's see. Let's see. Let me see.
Yeah, Kareem's
got 6. I think he's the leader. How many does Jordan have?
I don't know. He's probably got 6 finals MVPs.
Jordan's got 5 Jordan's got 5 MVPs.
Yeah.
Second most all time with Bill Russell. So Kareem has the most with 6.
Yep.
So I think you can make an argument for Kareem, and he is the all-time leader in points. He's probably going to get passed in that. I think LeBron James is going to have.
LeBron is probably going to pass him.
LeBron's just going to keep. I think LeBron's going to keep playing until he does.
He's going to play until he passes him.
Yeah. So he will get passed, which is a bit of a shame, But he did play for. You think he played for 20 years?
Played 20 years, and he wasn't doing the same workload in his last few years as he had before, but when he came into the league, he was a 30 points a game scorer, and he was his skyhook was unstoppable.
Yeah, that's the shot that I don't understand why no one, and he's offered to teach players. That's the thing. It was the most unstoppable shot in NBA history. And it was and it's beautiful to watch.
You can't stop it.
Wilt Chamberlain came the closest to blocking it, and that's because he tried to time it, which sort of shows how good of a hops that Chamberlain had. But just that skyhook, it's poetry in motion. It's a beautiful thing to watch.
Mm-hmm.
And looking at his early career, Kareem's early career, back when he was in Milwaukee, his rookie year 28 points, second year 31, third year 34. 30 points. The guy was over 25 points for his first 10 years in the league. You're talking about a guy who was an unstoppable scorer, and then he went to the Lakers where his game evolved a little bit and became less of a scorer because they had a better team around him that was able to help
when he got into the 80s, he didn't need to score 30 points a game anymore because he had Magic and ended up with Worthy, and they had a stacked team around him, but he was still the dominant low post guy, and his skyhook was ever present. And they had Jamal Wilkes and and I mean they just, but they don't win those championships without him.
Yeah.
And yeah, he was. I would argue that he was the greatest player.
And I feel like a lot of people don't give him enough credit for his defense. I mean, that's kind of the running joke. I mean, I think it was the movie Airplane where they made a joke about, my daddy says you don't play any defense. But if you look
Yeah.
at, I mean, you look at, he was an 11-time all defensive player. You know, he played for 20 seasons and he was over half of those times he was on the all defensive team. I mean,
Mhm.
granted, that may not have been a first team all defensive, you know, might have been second or third teams. I don't actually, I think it's just second team, you know, but still the fact that, you know, he was one of the 10 best defenders in the league in 11 of his 20 seasons is pretty
Well,
good.
and if you're, and you know, they break it down by position. So he was
Yeah.
the first or second best center defensively in the league, and his offensive numbers were
We're
outstanding.
outstanding.
You know, he's just a great player, and he also, you know, coming through the John Wooden school of thought with UCLA. As great as he was, it still wasn't for him. It wasn't about what he did. It was more about what he could do for the team. You know, how can he help the team win? And if it took him scoring 30 points a game, then that's what he was going to do. But it wasn't about, oh, I can score 30 points. You know, let me shoot the ball 30 times to make sure I get my 30 points. It was like, I'll get you 30 points because that's what's going to help us win as a team.
Yeah. You know, I mean, yeah, and one of the other things too is that he, you know, when he was in college, they weren't allowed to dunk. I mean, I think that he can thank that for the skyhook, you know, because
That
he wasn't
probably
able to
helped.
dunk. Yeah, it probably helped because it's like a guy that big, you know, I mean, you look at today's NBA, I mean, it's so tempting, you know, you got guys that are just, they just want to dunk the ball. That's all they want to do. You know, you got Giannis. I don't care about a jump shot. Just let me get to the rim and I'm going to dunk the ball. You know, and a guy that big and a guy that big, it's easy to fall on that temptation of, I'm just going to dunk it. But because he couldn't, he had to develop, you know, another aspect to his game, and thus the skyhook was born. And you know, I mean, he's got 38,387 points for his career. I mean, LeBron James is, you know, he's a good 3,300 behind him as far as the points go. So he's, you know, if LeBron plays another 2-3 years, averaging 25 points a game, and he'll probably get there.
Yeah, he'll probably pass him up, but you know, don't take anything away from Kareem. He was
no,
the
absolutely
greatest center of all times, and arguably the greatest player of all time.
Yeah, and I mean, and he's third place in all-time rebounds, and he's over 1,000 above the guy who's in fourth. So, I mean, you've got Elvin Hayes sitting at fourth place, and he's over 1,000 rebounds ahead of him. So, sort of a guy who's underrated as a defender. I mean, I feel like I feel like there's a lot of players that sort of get a reputation of, oh, he's only good at offense. You know, Kobe never passed the ball. You know, you got these guys where they just have this reputation, and then you look at the stats, and you're like, well, no, that's wrong.
That's
Kobe was a decent passer. I mean, yeah, he'd rather shoot the ball, but I mean, he averaged over 5 assists for his career.
Right.
You know, that's not a bad passer. You know, Kareem, 2.6 blocks per game. That's not a bad defender. That's a pretty good defender.
Yeah, it's above average.
Yeah, you know, and then you look at, and he's third on the all-time block list. You know, and he's over 100 ahead of Mark Eaton, who was a little bit taller than he was. But yeah, I mean, he's third on the all-time list.
He's third in rebounds, third in blocks.
Third in blocks, and he's
first in scoring.
Yeah, I mean,
first in MVPs.
Yeah,
I think
tied for second in championships. I think I don't think
probably.
there's anybody who's got. Well, no, I think there's that 8. I think Robert Ory's got 7. So there's some guys that, you know, but Robert Ory got those championships sort of as a hanger on. He was a guy who 6 championships, being one of the guys.
Yeah, Robert Ory didn't win any of those championships on his own. He was a valuable member of some really good teams.
Yeah,
and you know, he earned them. He was on really good teams, and he was a contributor. It's not like he was sitting on the bench and not participating either. But Kareem was a fixture on those championship teams.
Yeah, they don't win him without him. So I mean, like I said, it did hurt me a little bit to have to rank Kareem ahead of Wilt Chamberlain, because Wilt Chamberlain's my favorite all-time guy. but I couldn't ignore the numbers and go off of my personal preference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could make the case, and you know, everyone's talking, oh, Michael Jordan or LeBron, they're the greatest of all time, but what about Kareem?
Yeah, I think well, for me, Kareem is better than both of them.
Yeah,
But
and I think I think I might also agree with that a little bit. You know, just because I mean the numbers speak for themselves. I mean, he's got more MVPs than Jordan. He's got the same number of championships, and yeah, he lost a couple more. You know, Jordan, you know, he didn't go 0 for, you know, he didn't go 6-0, but neither did Tom Brady. You know, Tom Brady's got 7, but he didn't go 7-0, and everyone considers him the greatest quarterback. So let's give Kareem some love, guys. Let's put him in. Let's make him a part of the conversation.
Well, he got 6. He won 6, and he lost
2 or 3. I don't know.
So he got to the finals 9 times. I mean, that's no slouch there.
Yeah, I mean, Tom Brady made it. What I think Tom Brady made it 10 times.
He's 7 out of 10.
7 out of 10. So, you know, the same.
LeBron is 4 out of 10.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think you know, Kareem was great. And
yeah, so Kareem made it 10 times to the finals.
There you go.
Twice with Milwaukee and then 8 times with the Lakers.
Mm-hmm.
So he's 6 of 10. But still, 6 of 10. I mean, he made it 10 times.
He made it to the finals 10 of the times. 20 years. So half the years he was in the NBA, he made it to the finals.
He made it to the finals. I mean, yeah. I think we got to put him in the conversation at least. I think he deserves to be up there with Michael and LeBron.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, we're gonna go ahead and get wrapped up here. Mark, any last thoughts before we call it a day?
Another good list, great players, and it's always fun.
Yeah, I love, and especially for me, because as I said earlier, I love the center position. It was the position I idolized growing up. Just watching these big guys just, you know, go to work in the low post. It was just something I always loved and admired. So yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in another episode of our Average Joe Sports Shows. We will see you guys on Wednesday for another episode. Have a good night.